As a young man, heard the sky's the limit. First thing first, I'ma break through the ceiling. One life jam, but it feels infinite. One life damn, then I better go get it.
Hello everyone, and welcome to A Bearable Conversation with John and Gill. I am Jillian Seguin, Associate Wealth Advisor at IA Private Wealth with the Reyes Group.
And I am John Reyes, Wealth Advisor at Reyes Group at IA Private Wealth. And together we are A Bearable Conversation.
Yes.
You started it out with that, didn't you?
Yes.
Okay.
That's okay, John. You don't listen very often when I talk anyway, so.
I'm fresh off of a contract renewal and I'm against my own decision to be on this couch. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so we are excited to get these podcasts
Super
going again.
excited.
We've taken a little bit of a sabbatical and we are back at it. So lots of new content. And as we've always said, if you do have anything that you want us to talk about, or any topics that you want to hear about or get our thoughts on, please do comment or send us a note. Today we're going to talk about a subject that may or may not resonate with you. It's really talking about, well, the topic is why smart people still make bad money decisions. So I guess it's subjective what you think is smart, but you would associate generally smart with street smarts and academics, but why that doesn't translate into decision making where you could have a very successful business or career and yet you make bad decisions with money. There's a number of reasons this happens. You had a couple stories you wanted to talk about.
I think that when you think about it, I do, and I will say that, you know, this focus of these new podcasts, or at least for season 3, what gets me excited, if I want to make a comment about that, is that we're trying to find the best blend between what is Gill and John in terms of what we can bring to our audience. And I think that this topic starts us off pretty well with it, because we do have two trains of thought in terms of how we came together. You know, Gill is a super intelligent, very academically smart individual who I would want beside me every single time in terms of things that we do, whether it's in our day in, day out business decision making, how we work with clients, and everything in between. I would think that my approach to how I brought things, and I don't want to shy away from saying the word street smarts, but just a different way of thinking, a different way of putting together problem solving, and unfortunately, or fortunately, the terminology has often been, been brought back to street smarts. I think I'm academically well read in certain areas, yes. But I read a ton. But the reality is, I do, when it comes to making certain decisions, do lean on that, and that combination between us helps us do it. So
let's call it life experiences.
Yeah, the right type of life
yes.
experiences that we both bring to the table. So, why do people make the story, to bring it back full circle here, is, you'll often see these, whether it's in basketball, baseball, hockey, I'm not going to name individual athletes because, we don't really need to have lawsuits on our hands. But you take a look at these athletes that sometimes come out of, high school or, or innate talent that they have, whatever it might be, kicking the ball, swinging a bat, shooting a puck, or shooting hoops. And they're given these massive contracts, even to this point now that they've brought that money into the NCAA at the university level, where they're now being able to share more in the profit and revenue. So, we look at that and we say that, oh, wow, your innate talent gives you the ability to acquire, wealth, whether it's in terms of, you'd hope it would be knowledge and all these other dynamics, but the reality is they pay these athletes and they make them rich. And that's the worst thing you could do. And you can see so many different stories of athletes that are, have all the talent in the world and end up ruining their careers because they make really poor decisions. So yeah, wealth and money, I shouldn't say wealth, money does not translate into intelligence. You can be paid a lot of money for the things that you do and not have any type of skill set to manage that stuff.
Yep. Yeah, I think what I think is interesting is I've always equated our brains to having two sides. Room for academic whether it's reading or education, and then the other side for, rationale, common sense. And I just feel like if you overweight one side, then it's at the expense of the other.
100%.
Because I know people who are uber successful, uber intelligent, and yet they can't dress themselves in the morning. They don't know how to match a color, or they don't know maybe slangs or funny jokes. They don't get them. But if you pin them up against what diplomas are hanging on their wall, you would say, oh, that guy or that girl is super smart. So the biggest component, I would say, in all of this that we all have, intelligent or not, is emotion and biases and history or legacy that's left with us based on our upbringing, right? So whether you are smart or not, how you are brought up and how you feel things is going to dictate very often what you do with your money.
Yeah, I think that depending on how you look at the world and what your experiences are, I think that there's been this misnomer, this misunderstanding that, if you grew up in a affluent community of means and power and respect, or you grow up in, where I grew up, and again, hardworking, middle class, part of Calgary, that you will have a fundamentally different perspective on how things go. And yeah, maybe there are some stereotypes that carry through on that, but I was just reading I'm so hesitant to mention it because then we have to reference it, but I'm going to go anyways.
I was thinking about a podcast that I listened to. I was like,
but I'm going to go there, and I am going to say, because this was noted, and we will find it. But Stanford University, it has, it's up there in the Ivy League schools as a respectable institution, and by no means is this a casting anything on Stanford. But unfortunately, in the last decade, a number of individuals that have graduated from that school, which I'm sure they were all dying to get into, was if you look at the latest white collar financial crimes that have occurred in this last decade of meaning, of substantial, have all come from people that are highly educated, and unfortunately for Stanford have all been connected to that school. So that's not to say that Stanford has this culture of producing criminals. That's not what I'm saying. But you would believe that those high educated, high school, and I'm talking about Elizabeth, I can't remember her last name, that did, I think it's Thanos, or I think that's the name of the company. We'll get that exact, but I mean, she came out and was, providing this ability to create a system of probing blood and being able to detect, it was a really, she was one of the top 100 women, and really it was all in a farce, right? Mm-hmm. And then yet you have somebody like Jay-Z as an example from the hip hop culture, who literally started out his whole life selling crack, and then now has converted himself into becoming one of the most highly paid black entrepreneurs out there, worth billions, right? So each of those stories should have ended very differently, and yet they cross over and quite the opposite.
And I think another thing that you're alluding to with those examples, and not Jay-Z, but more so the I remember that I saw it on 60 Minutes.
Yeah, I can't remember her name. Elizabeth's her first name. I want to say.
Anyways, she just often overconfidence can breed bad decision making as well, right?
Yeah.
If you start to get overconfident, and sometimes when you find success, you just think you're invincible. There are people in this world, Trump, that are invincible and never get caught with anything. But
how do you get away with saying things like, "Oh, Iran and us are really at the cusp of making a decision," only for the next news article to say, "We have not talked to the United States"?
Okay, stop. But
I'm just saying.
But yeah, if you get that feeling of being invincible and that you can't lose at the game of life, you'll take chances too. I would say also having a windfall of money. I don't know whether you were brought up with this concepts of, nouveau riche, or they came from money. right? And
Yeah.
and the different decisions they make. When you have a windfall or you find your first bit of success and you get a big paycheck, you now want to show it to the world, versus being humble and just plugging along and stashing it away, right?
I will fully admit, I mean, at this time in my life, being going to be 46 later this year, I lost friendships over it. I'm not afraid to admit that
What,
anymore.
by keeping up with the Joneses, or?
No, because I was not taught how to handle success and money in a very humble way, and believing that you can just openly share with people around you, and even though your intentions may be good and that you're trying to share, it can come across as arrogant. It can come across as you're being, look at me, and in reality, you're not. You're trying to just find sense in how things happen. And when you're an entrepreneur, it's unfortunately a zero-sum game. You're either really done well or you don't. And but what you want to hope for is that as you progress in life and as you grow and as you gather your experience and the right experience and you meet the right people that start to teach you can't say that. How many times have you had to say it, John? You can't be that way. You can't act like that. You got to be like this. I'm not perfect. And I'm not saying that I've got piles of cash. That's not what we're talking about. It's just talking about being able to ensure that you can move within your life and be more successful, and that it's not equated to money in your bank. It's equated to your experiences, the wealth, and the people that you bring around you.
Yep.
Right? So, and that happens more than you would think. I don't know if you have anything else to say on this.
I was just going to say, when I went back to talking about what makes somebody look smart, and it was interesting. I'll find the podcast I listened to, but it was talking about confidence and how do you improve on your self-esteem and your confidence.
Yeah.
And there was 7 steps. And one of them is find a skill that is highly valued, that people value highly, okay, and become very proficient in it. But don't focus on the skill being what makes you feel confident. It's the journey, the exams, whatever it is that you took to get that skill. That being said, your confidence will hopefully in tandem increase, and people will view you as a very intelligent person because you have this particular skill in this particular area. That does not mean that you have that level of skill in all areas. So it's the adage of stay in your lane, right? So you might be uber smart in the oil and gas industry or in photography or whatever it is, right? But you don't know how to manage money.
Yeah.
And so there's our plug, John.
There's our plug. You notice that we've got these new banners
that's why
in the
you
background?
need,
I like pulling
that's
this
why
over
you
so
need
often.
us. But no, that's it.
Yeah.
I would say is like, just because you're smart. Anyway.
No, I get what you're saying, and I think the points. I think that when we're looking at the pitfalls of things, we talk about this quite a bit, and I can't remember. And Simon's behind the camera, as most of you know. Simon, I'm going to pull on you here real quick because I can't remember the name. Who's that footballer who has his hair tied back, really tall dude, played in the U.S. for a little bit, but he's really polarizing figure, has a goatee, beard, starts with a Z. Yeah, so he actually was on recently talking about, wealth and moments. And I found that to be so empowering. Now, it's not a very unique thought in what he's brought to the table, but it just reminded me about that, in that, moments are what you make of them. And a lot of times people will equate that moment, whether it's at the kitchen table or at Disney or on a vacation or on a plane, and they will unfortunately blur how they got to that moment. They will think that it was their means that got them there, and the reality is that you could have a moment anywhere, and those are the things that should be that carry us. And the reason why I talk about that is when we talk about the money decisions is sometimes you are in a position that you have to make these money decisions. You have to come up with it, and having yourself circle, have a circle of friends or a circle of people that are around you that you can trust to help make those decisions, can make sure that you become one of those smart people that do make good money decisions. Now, we're going to plug us, right? That's just what we do every day and every day. But at the end of it, it's making sure that you just know that you have that go-to to be able to make sure that you have an ability to make the right decision.
That's it. And if you have been smart and you've been successful in whatever world you operate in, think about how you achieve that success. I would say you probably had a business plan, you probably had a strategy, you probably had steps and smart people around you that supported whatever you were creating or building, whether it was your career or business. So I would also go back to, we had these financial blogs, right? And we talked about the financial life cycle. And in the beginning days, when you aren't as savvy in really any field, because you're probably still doing your university degree or whatever, how to start setting yourself up for when the success does happen, when you start to have your career and the money starts to come in. And if you create that behavior, muscle memory of putting away a little bit of savings each time, that muscle memory doesn't change. It just means you're putting a little bit more money away each time. And so if you have a trained mindset that I got to save a little bit and spend a little bit, that when you do have a lot of money, if you are fortunate enough, you're not going to make those bad decisions, because you're going to say, no, I have this foundation that I've been doing all along of putting a little bit away, right?
Yeah, and I think that I love that you said that. I wish you almost didn't finish it, because I wanted to give you a plug in that. Anybody that knows me well knows that I'm all about trying to make connections, whether it's with our audience, with the people that we we work for, or each other. And so I'll be vulnerable here, and I'm going to say that, as we ended the last season, one of the things that really started to bother me was I started to feel like we were getting too technical. We were getting too specific. And I realized that why I was feeling that was because it was stepping outside of my comfort zone, even though it was a huge element of what you bring to our team and how very important it is. So I just want everyone to know that, what you're going to get from these next series, like this next series, I guess, season 3, is going to be a much more engaged educational component that I'm going to support, because I truly believe that we have a lot of anecdotal things. Yes, that's where I'm going to come to the table, but a lot of the stuff that Gill talks about in terms of wanting to make sure that we educate, I just want to tell you that I believe in that. I just want to educate with some fun and some purpose. Not to say you don't, but that's going to help me get engaged. So on that note, you were talking about that, which I believe is the accumulation phase of what you were talking about, if I'm not mistaken. Or is it before it?
It's the accumulation.
See, I was learning. I did my homework. Okay, now I want us to shift over, though, and, let's use some examples in the world of investing where, that what can happen when we talk about rich people making...
intelligent people.
Sorry. Why smart people still make bad money decisions, and it can be tied to emotions sometimes, right? It has nothing to do with their intellect or their wealth, but maybe what's happening. So I'm gonna segue you into this so that you can really show how that can happen. So what I have written is, volatility is temporary, emotional decisions can be permanent. So can you talk about, in our line of work, how that happens, where we've seen very, very smart people get nervous, and why it's important that they have people like us?
Okay, so I will say...
First, you got to say thank you, John, for supporting me, and then you can say whatever else you want to say.
Thanks, John.
Okay.
I have to try and prove my intelligence because I'm blonde.
Here we go.
Anyways.
And we're back.
So, I'm not going to name names. I know someone who has their master's from Cambridge in London, full scholarship. They have their PhD from MIT. They are probably the smartest, most intelligent person I know.
Greatest man I've met. So,
ever.
Yep.
And yet this gentleman fell victim to a financial scam because the scammer preyed on his fear and his emotions. And what would otherwise be an absolutely ridiculous thing to do in an everyday world, the scammers got this individual to do it, which was putting money into a crypto machine when they knew nothing about a crypto machine or crypto. And so they also don't have money to play around with like that. So this is again, for me, a perfect example. Why do they need us? Because we collectively, you and I, are made very aware of the scams that are going on. We know how to recognize red flags. We know how to safeguard our clients. But if they don't have somebody to turn to, they don't involve anybody, which is what most of these scammers try to do, is isolate them.
They prey on the fear, right?
Yep.
The embarrassment.
Then it doesn't matter how intelligent you are.
Yeah.
You're gonna, most likely you'll be vulnerable.
Yeah.
So that would be one example.
Can I give an example?
Yes.
Another example that I would state is, we just talked about intelligence, but sometimes we also have a fear factor of who is giving you the advice from an age standpoint, right? Like, is the individual younger than me? Why would I ever want to listen to that person? They're in their 40s, I'm in my 80s, I know what I'm doing, et cetera, et cetera. And I'll tell you a clear-cut example from my own home experiences. I remember when I was a teenager, granted I had little to no experience, but I had enough intelligence to be able to know when I saw something that wasn't probably the most effective way of spending money. My father was at the tail end of his career at working in telecommunications. At the time was TELUS, before that AGT, for anybody that's from Calgary, the Alberta Government Telephone Company. And my dad was really, really good at what he did. And the problem was that he didn't understand that he was the best at a technology that was about to become irrelevant. Now, I'm not going to give you a big detailed version, but there used to be switching technology is what was used in order to help keep our phone systems moving along, and then that changed to fiber optics. Well, that adaptation happened here first in North America, and so a lot of the relevancy of what my father had could still be applied in other parts of the world. And so when you have somebody like that who's traveling the world, doesn't have a care, getting paid a ton of money, having meetings in Toronto when he lives in Calgary, and flying for half a day, like, a lot of it just didn't make a lot of sense to me. But, God forbid you would be the one that sells that to your father, who is supposed to be your father at 19 years old, that maybe you should look at the way this is being done, only to be met with some pretty fierce aggression in terms of my opinion. And so again, that's an example of, sometimes we are also guarded by where the advice is coming from.
Yep.
I look back now at you and I being in our 30-somethings, as you like to call it, 30-16 here this year. And now we've accumulated all the right experience, but it was difficult when we were younger, trying to give people advice on what we should be doing and how they do it. And don't kid yourselves, we've grown a very successful business, and we still have to deal with the whole, at times convincing clients we do know what we're doing.
Yes.
So anyways, long-winded story, but I wanted to share that too, that it's not always about intelligence. It can be also based on age.
How about the acronym FOMO?
Oh yeah.
That's a big one, right?
That crosses over in a lot of things. So why don't you go ahead?
FOMO is fear of missing out.
Yeah.
So you're sitting at a dinner party and everybody's talking about where they're making money or what their advisors are doing, or, and it's like, oh, I got to, I got to do this, the next big thing. I got to invest in cryptocurrency. I got to invest in cannabis, taking complete disregard.
AI.
Yeah, complete disregard for what age group you're in, what your financial position is, what you are able to...
What your goals are.
Yeah, what your goals are. All of that is just like that fear of missing out. I got to get in. And I think a lot of people they've made money.
Yeah.
I don't want to take away from that, but there's been people who have made bad decisions that way, just purely on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then also just the best example I have is, you've got tissue boxes at the superstore, all different brands, but because your mom bought Kleenex and a tissue that you blow your nose with is called a Kleenex, not a tissue. Get me a Kleenex. That's marketing, but it's also your upbringing, right? So you will spend more, make a bad financial decision and spend more on something like that just because you're familiar with that name.
Yeah. Instead of maybe doing your research or trying to get
the tissue
best,
right next to it is exactly the same.
Yeah.
Anyway.
No, I think those are good. I think that we're getting close to wrapping this up.
Let's wrap it up.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit more too. And I mean, again, we want to try to continue to find ways to add value, not in just our storytelling or our ability to connect it back to what we do, but there is some biology too that we need to keep in mind, right? Like you got to know that when you're making decisions, there's just natural stress hormones that get triggered in what we're doing, and those things can be alleviated by information. Again, what a lot of people don't seem to realize is people think that when markets go down, that clients or people immediately have a negative reaction to that. In reality, if you peel back all the layers, the market, or even people for that matter, understand inherently, intelligence or not, that markets go up and markets go down. What it is that they don't like is not being informed, having that confidence of understanding the why. And you will be far better off protecting yourself and your actual, whether it's cortisol levels that spike, whether it's a bunch of things that can change when you get upset about decision making. The reality is that if you just do the basics of just informing yourself about why things are happening, it will alleviate a lot of the pressure that you may inherently feel when you are going through moments of uncertainty. Get educated, get informed, right? Pick up a respectable news outlet or data center that you can create
not CNN?
Realistic conversations, or Fox for that matter. Find something more in the middle and try to find that.
Or pay attention to both of them so you can
get equally anxious in just the world from one perspective to the other.
Here's what I would like to close with, and it's
no, we closed it already. I just closed it.
It's a quote that actually Sharm wrote down. I really like it. It says, "The goal isn't to eliminate emotion. It's to build a system that protects you from it." We should give her a raise.
No.
Okay.
We already gave them the little bit of money. Remember, we talked about this.
Okay.
We got to wait till they spend that little bit of money, and then we'll maybe see how much further we got to give them.
Okay.
We got to keep them poor if they want to work for the next paycheck, Jill.
Okay. And that's how we keep our teammates from making bad financial decisions.
That's how we keep our smart people making bad financial decisions.
All right.
Are they going to get paid this week?
Thanks for joining us, and we look forward to the next one.
Bye.
Bye.
As a young man, heard the sky's the limit. First thing first, I'ma break through the ceiling. One life jam, but it feels infinite. One life jam, then I better.
This information has been prepared by John Reyes, Wealth Advisor, and Jillian Seguin, Associate Wealth Advisor for IA Private Wealth Incorporated, and does not necessarily reflect the opinion of IA Private Wealth. The information contained in this video comes from sources we believe reliable, but we cannot guarantee its accuracy or reliability. The opinions expressed are based on an analysis and interpretation dating from the date of publication and are subject to change without notice. Furthermore, they do not constitute an offer or solicitation to buy or sell any of the securities mentioned. The information contained herein may not apply to all types of investors. The wealth advisors can open accounts only in the provinces in which they are registered. IA Private Wealth Incorporated is a member of the Canadian Investor Protection Fund and the Canadian Investment Regulatory Organization. IA Private Wealth is a trademark and business name under which IA Private Wealth Incorporated operates.